Hi, it's Monday, September 8th, and we're tracking Hurricane Kiko just northeast of the Hawaiian island chain this morning. You can see the system is looking much more disheveled than it has been over the past few days, as it has been now passing over for the past day cooler waters that are present east of the Hawaiian Islands. And the waters here are generally about 25 degrees Celsius, a little cold for a hurricane, but the bigger issue now is that the system is beginning to get sheared out of the southwest from this upper level low that you might be able to pick out with some counterclockwise rotation just north of the Hawaiian Islands. And this is providing a strong fetch of southwesterly shear in advance of the storm, which you can see the impacts of now. The center is about here, and all the showers and thunderstorms, meaning all the rough weather with this system, are pushed off to the north and the northeast. And we can further confirm this if we look at the recon data that's coming in right now. They're flying into the storm right now. And you can see they've already made one pass through the center. And while we do have some pretty potent winds on the south side of the center, you really have to be right up against the center of circulation to feel those winds. And well south of that, there's not all too much to speak of. Very light winds south of this. And this is a segment of the storm that's going to be impacting Hawaii. And you can see the ugly side of it up here. Much stronger winds and a more pronounced profile of winds extending from the center. And this will all be staying north of Hawaii. And for that reason, we don't have any tropical storm watches or warnings that have been issued for the state, as that southwesterly shear, like I mentioned, is keeping all the strongest weather off to the north. And so as this passes north, we're not really expecting all too much impacts-wise in the Hawaiian island chain. The most you may feel is periodic showers and thunderstorms, but that's about it. Nothing too different from a normal day. And really, if you're not watching the news, you're really not going to know that there's a tropical storm going north of you. But as this forecast continues off throughout this week, you can see it remains a tropical storm as it tracks further northwest of the Hawaiian Islands. There may be a period in here where the shear lowers and it might try to rebound a little bit. Some models have tried to show that, but that does depend partially on how well the system goes in structure itself over the next couple of days in the face of this stronger southwest shear. If it's more resilient, it may have a better chance to rebound. If not, it may just continue to gradually weaken over that time frame. But by that point, there's no land threat after the Hawaiian Islands, so there's no reason really to worry about anything of what the storm does after that. And towards the end of the forecast period, it will likely be weakening further and will likely be nearing the end of its lifetime here for this iteration of Hurricane Kiko. Okay, that is all for Hurricane Kiko. Might be my last video as well on the storm as a whole. What I want to do now is just take a look at the rest of the tropics, because today is September 8th, and climatologically speaking, this is the peak month for hurricane and typhoon activity in the Northern Hemisphere. And really, there's not all too much to speak of. In terms of active tropical cyclones, Kiko is really it. There's nothing really else happening. There was a tropical storm, or typhoon rather, sorry, that came into southern China. That system is now decaying away west of Hong Kong. But apart from that, we have no real tropical cyclones active across the world. There are a couple of areas of interest to watch. The first one is in the Indian Ocean. You can see that we have a lot of convection here over Indonesia in the Indian Ocean. And it's not on the northern side of the Indian Ocean, it's on the southern side. I'm going to pick out a circulation here, and even further east of there, we've got another circulation in the north central South Indian Ocean. And it's possible that we see two systems try and form here in this basin, two more potential off-season candidates, which is pretty amazing because this is still winter time in the southern Indian Ocean. But across the northern hemisphere, where else are we going to watch? We really only have one area to watch, and that's across the Pacific, as we have a little bit of an area of low pressure. You might be able to pick out a little bit of spin here south of Central America, which is going to be tracking west-northwest over the next few days, and this is probably going to have a good chance at forming into the next East Pacific hurricane as it remains offshore of Mexico. Now, the good news is with this one is it's not forecast to make a landfall, at least for now. A strong area of high pressure across northern Mexico and the southern U.S. will likely keep this offshore. But if that changes any, we'll talk about that when we get there. As of right now, the Hurricane Center gives us a 50-50 shot of forming in the next 7 days, and it will probably continue to go up as we go throughout the next outlook cycles. But also across the Atlantic, and this is where I'm kind of going with this, moving over to the Atlantic, because we were just talking about last week that we would likely have a tropical storm active approaching the Lesser Antilles this week. Yet, if we look at the tropical Atlantic right now, not all too much. We've got a little disturbance here in the intertropical convergence zone, but this is at rather low latitude, and models aren't really doing all too much with this system. So really across the entire Atlantic, things are very quiet. Really the only thing of true interest is this frontal boundary that we have draped across the eastern U.S., stretching into the Gulf of Mexico, where we've had an area of low pressure form off the west coast of Florida. That system is getting sheared and is not forecast to do all too much. So over the next 7 days in the Atlantic, which is remarkable for the climatological peak of the season, no tropical development is expected. So now the question becomes, when are we going to look at development next in the Atlantic? Well, if we take a look at the MJO, which is a zone of rising air that progresses across the planet with time, you can see right now, this is the initialization. We're favoring the Indian Ocean. And you can see this if we look at this big view across the Indian Ocean with all this convection. This is what the MJO helps fuel, is all the convection here. And that's why we're looking at potential tropical development in the southern Indian Ocean. But as you go further in time throughout the middle into the latter half of this month, you'll see in the colors here, which is the forecast, it begins to retrograde back west towards region 1 and even close to region 8, which is generally favorable for Atlantic tropical development, because once it does that, it retrogrades back west over the African continent, which can help form tropical waves over that continent, which eventually, once they come offshore into the tropical Atlantic, can have a chance to develop. Now, having said that, this is going to be a fairly low amplitude phase of the MJO, so we may just have to contend with our seasonal favorability that we have across the Atlantic. And so far, things are not looking good seasonal favorability wise, as we have had a lot of dry air in the tropical Atlantic. And I mentioned this in my hurricane season forecast as a potential issue back in May and June with the season of temperature configuration, that we may have that issue. And we had a similar issue last year. We had a fairly quiet relative to the expectations for last hurricane season, had a relatively quiet early September last year. But the issue with that is these quieter periods can be deceiving sometimes. And we'll have to watch for later in the month if we do see activity start to pick up. Like, for example, going off of last year's example, we had a fairly quiet early September, but going into mid to late September last year, we had a lot of activity kick up. In late September last year, we had Hurricane Helene, and early October, we had Hurricane Milton. And that just shows how quickly hurricane season can ramp up. And what I think we might just be in right now is just a quieter lull in the activity. Because usually you have these peaks in activity, and then it goes down in activity. So like we had Hurricane Erin and Tropical Storm Fernand in the Western Atlantic in late August. Now here we are in early September. We're in this quieter phase. And now things are about to get active again, maybe in a couple of weeks. So by the time we get to late September, we may actually have several systems to talk about. Now, the question as well that I would have is, are we going to fix these stability issues in the MDR for tropical wave development off the coast of Africa? It is possible, because we are now in the period of the year where we're transitioning into fall in the Northern Hemisphere. So temperatures overall are starting to decrease with time. And so with that, we may increase some instability across the tropical Atlantic, because when you have warm water like we have here and cold air aloft, that allows air to rise, that allows buoyancy to the atmosphere and can make the atmosphere more unstable, which can favor thunderstorm development in tropical cyclones. Alongside this MJO being here, maybe supporting some more tropical wave development. But all to say is that even though we are quiet right now, remarkably quiet for the time of year, we are still in the meat of the hurricane season. And the top 3 months for hurricane season activity is August, September, and October. So we can absolutely still see the hurricane season pick up, and I would still expect that. I would still expect a near to above average season overall when we're all said and done by the end of November. So don't take this as the hurricane season is done and quiet. Things will likely wake up sometime later this month. And the Climate Prediction Center has a couple of areas marked as we head into mid to late September here. You can see these 2 areas in week 3, which is in that time frame, showing that significant potential for tropical development in that time frame in the Gulf of Mexico and the tropical Atlantic. So we will have to watch how things go in the next several weeks through the Atlantic. But for now, let's just enjoy the quiet period while we have it. And hopefully this upcoming East Pacific storm stays away from Mexico and is another nice major hurricane to look at on satellite like Hurricane Kiko was when it was out in the open Pacific. But that's all that I've got for today's video. I probably won't have any more videos on Hurricane Kiko as it's not forecast to make direct impacts to the Hawaiian Islands. And I guess the next video will be whenever we have something interesting to talk about in the tropics. Maybe we'll talk about some seasonal forecast update next. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.